When you think about the ability to ask questions and its connection to learning, you can think about other skills that students are taught in school. Think about reading. It's possible to learn without reading. It's possible to learn without knowing how to read. It's possible to learn and discover new things and new ideas without knowing how to read. But we would never consider not teaching the skill of reading because we know how valuable it is for continuous learning, for deeper learning, for being able to learn new things that you don't necessarily see around you. So we would never consider that as not worthy of teaching. Think about another skill, writing. You can learn without writing, but we know how important writing is for communicating learning as well as many other things. We would never consider not teaching the skill of writing. So when you think about the skill of questioning, think about the greatest questioners the world has ever seen, the most prolific questioners the world has ever seen. Children before the age of 5. What are they doing? They're learning all the time, and they're learning very often through asking questions and trying to make sense of what's around them. Well, why wouldn't we want to continue that learning process with the ability to ask questions, to produce their own questions, to improve their own questions, to think about how they can use their questions, and to discover new questions? That's what we really would want to do to promote learning from birth all the way through adulthood. When students learn to ask their own questions, there's different changes that teachers observe in their classroom. We've developed a process that allows students to produce their questions, work with their questions, improve them, categorize them, prioritize, strategize on how to use them, in a very simple process that allows them to basically scaffold their learning just through asking questions. And when students learn how to do that, teachers observe very significant changes in students. They see cognitive changes. Students who had not known how to ask questions, how to ask different kinds of questions, now have a structure for doing it. They know how to produce their own questions, which by itself is very significant, because very often trying to get questions from students can be one of the most challenging tasks that a teacher faces. So the idea that students can learn how to produce their own questions is very significant. So there are cognitive changes, and they also know about the different kind of questions and that the differences between closed-ended questions and open-ended questions. They become more sophisticated question askers. Then there are affective changes. When students learn how to ask their own questions and do their work with it, they all of a sudden have a sense of discovery, a sense of excitement, a sense of engagement with their work, and they also feel more confident. Because part of what you're doing is you're actually honoring not knowing. You're honoring ignorance. There's this great book by Stuart Firestein of Columbia University called Ignorance, How It Drives Science. And in it, he makes the case that we have to help students, and he's talking about doctoral students at a university level. We have to help them learn how to manage ignorance, to actually work with all that we don't know, because what we know is just a fraction of what we don't know. So if we want to really promote learning, we need to help students learn how to ask more and better questions. Well, that applies not only to doctoral students, it applies to first graders as well, 8th graders and 12th graders. It's something that we could actually be promoting actively and seeing those differences in students. So the students feel more confident, they feel more excited about their learning. So in addition to the cognitive changes, the affective changes, teachers talk about the behavioral changes that they see. They see students self-regulating. They see students managing these discussions, doing this collaborative work, learning from each other. Sometimes students who have more prior knowledge than others actually learn from the questions that other students have. Students learn from each other in this way, and they actually learn how to think together, how to learn from each other, how to basically take the energy of one person's question and turn it into the energy of a new question. So it's very exciting to see. So you see these cognitive, affective, and behavioral changes. And most of all, what teachers love is the students take ownership of their learning. And that sense of taking ownership, it's like, this is a question, I asked it, I want to know the answer to it. So one of the students who has demonstrated this was actually in a summer school remedial program in 9th grade at the risk of being held back for a year. And his teacher helped the students go through the question formulation technique, use the process for learning how to ask better questions. And at the end, he talked about how he felt smart because he was asking good questions and giving good answers. And that adjective, feeling smart, may not be a word that he would have described, that he would have used to describe himself in an academic setting before that experience. So one of the other great benefits of teaching students how to ask their own questions is that teachers feel more joy. And it's a very demanding profession. It's a very difficult one. There are a lot of demands. There's a lot of pressures to make sure the students get the right answers. Well, if they learn to ask better questions, they're on the pathway to getting to better answers. But in the process, they're not just sitting there and receiving commands and receiving information and just doing as they're told. The teachers are facilitating a learning process in which students are excited about learning. And for teachers, that's gold. That's where they get their energy from. That's where they get their excitement. We've had so many teachers talk about that they just love the joy that comes from when they help students learn how to ask their own questions and see that energy in the classroom. And for many teachers, there's an understanding that when you're deliberately teaching the skill of question formulation, you're teaching not only a learning skill, but you're also teaching a democratic skill. And that we can imagine a dictatorship without citizens asking questions, but in a democracy, we need more citizens asking more questions and asking better questions, and teachers play a key role in making that happen.